Welcome back, friends. We are back for another beautiful and joy-filled Storytellers episode of This Whole Life, and we're joined once again by Sister Faustina Maria Pia of the Sisters of Life out in the Big Apple. Welcome back, Sister. How are you?
Great to be with you.
Great to be with you again. Yeah, thanks so much for being with us. We have a deep appreciation, clearly, for all religious sisters across the world. We have a special place in our hearts for the Sisters of Life and all the ways that we have kind of crossed paths with them over the years. But we would love to get even just the tiniest glimpse into the life of a Sister of Life. Is there any story that you can share with us and our listeners of a particular moment of grace or the power of God in the midst of your ministry?
Absolutely. We are really blessed to be witnesses of God's work in the front row, I would say, of Him transforming lives. Life is messy for all of us, and suffering is very real. And sometimes you encounter a woman that has what feels like the combined sufferings of a large group, all in one person's life. And it's really humbling to see them make choices for God in the midst of that, and to know where that grace comes from. I know we're upheld by a lot of people's prayers, so I want to say thank you for praying for us, and don't underestimate the power of your prayer. Sometimes I go to bed at night and I wonder, where did that grace come from that she said yes to life today? And we've been trying for a while, and I think in the economy of salvation, we're not going to find out till the other side. But thank you for keeping us in your prayers, because it really is a spiritual work that we're about. So one story I was thinking about sharing it today, I'll call her Pam, a woman that came to us. She was in a very difficult season of life and really questioning the value of her life. And then she found out she was pregnant. So again, a very shocking time to be thinking about motherhood, but also it gave her an ounce of like, wow, maybe my life has a purpose. And so she was very scared, didn't know what to do. And she ended up in the hospital getting some prenatal care and different things. The doctors were saying, your baby's going to be born very premature. There's all these abnormalities possibly. And she got very scared and very overwhelmed with the doctors. And, they were very strong about maybe you should terminate this pregnancy. She got very scared because she was so convicted when she found out that she was pregnant that maybe this is why God had her still alive. And so she reached out to us. We came to her in the hospital, some of our sisters, and really walked her through, helped her get a better doctor. And she was on bed rest for a time, but her baby was still born pretty premature at 26 weeks, which, if you know anything, that's very, very premature.
No kidding.
And her little son was about 2 pounds, and then he lost a little weight.
Oh, goodness.
So he was in the NICU. He was the sickest baby in the NICU. They didn't know if he was going to survive. And she came to live with us at that point. And I was living at the house where these women live with us. So that's where I really started walking with her. And I saw her, every day going to the NICU to be with her son. And really the love that was, so, it was so hard, but it was like really blossoming in her, being with her son, helping be with her. And because of the different things that were going on with him medically, as he was growing, his breathing was actually getting worse. He needed a surgery, but he couldn't have the surgery till he got to a certain size. It was this delicate balance that he wasn't big enough for surgery that he needed, but as he was growing, his pipe, it was less and less air. And as he slept, long story short, when he came home from the NICU, he still hadn't had the surgery. And as he slept, he would stop breathing. So we'd have to wake him up to get him breathing. And we had oxygen on him. And I'm actually a nurse, so I was very aware that his oxygen saturation was dropping very low at night. So it's supposed to be in the 90s. And during COVID, I think people kind of became aware of your oxygen saturation, but it would sometimes drop into the 80s with people with COVID or 70s. But he would just stop breathing. And if you weren't there to see that he would stop breathing, to wake him up, it would keep dropping. And 1 week it was like the 60s, would drop into the 60s, and at the 50s, it kept dropping. And I was calling the doctors and I was saying, like, this is crazy. Like, I don't want this child. We've been through so much to die on our watch. Like, here he is in our home. Like I'm a nurse. So I had sisters on the clock at night taking shifts so the mom could sleep, so that if he stopped breathing, they could wake him up. So it was really, really tough. And finally, it was a week and a half before the scheduled surgery. And again, his numbers were dropping very, very low. And so I looked at this mom, Pam, and she was a fallen away Catholic. And I said, you want to do a novena leading up to your son's surgery. Like, let's do a novena. And we had been walking to St. Patrick's because that's in walking distance. It's a beautiful church, lighting candles. And she, out of all of St. Patrick's, she loved one side chapel the best. And that's where she decided to pray for her son every time we walked to St. Patrick's. And it was the shrine of St. Charbel, who is this Maronite, monk, So I said, Pam, like, let's pray a rosary for every night for 9 days, make a rosary novena, and we'll pray a prayer to St. Charbel. And she was like, okay, let's do it. So at night, her little son's in bed, and I come with her in her room. We pray a rosary together, and then we're going to pray this prayer that I found on the back of a holy card to St. Charbel. So we prayed it. And then afterwards, I kind of freestyled the prayer afterwards. I was just praying for all the doctors and the nurses. I was praying that he would receive all the oxygen that he has been lacking, that would be like replenished. I mean, I was thinking of like everything I could think of to just pray over this child, right?
Yeah.
And I look over to Pam. She has her eyes closed. She's just listening to me, praying with me. And then I turned to her after I could think of nothing more to say. I look at her. She's got her eyes closed. I said, Pam, do you want to add anything to that prayer? And she just nodded her head and she said, we love you, St. Charbel. We love you. And it was such a striking moment for me because here I am, with this mom who's afraid that her child's going to die, and in a very serious situation. And I'm praying that God keeps him alive, that the doctors are thinking. And the one prayer that I didn't say that came to her heart, who was the mother of this child, she was like, we love you, St. Charbel. We love you.
Yeah.
And it was so piercing that that's what the prayer on her heart was. I was so moved by that. I said, St. Charbel, if you do not hear that prayer where you are, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it was so moving. And it was a moment for me that, like, the power of the simple, almost child's prayer, that's going to move a heart, And sure enough, this was an amazing experience. But that night, so it was probably like around 9 p.m. when this all was happening. That night, her little son's oxygen did not drop. Maybe it went to the 80s once or twice. It was a complete unheard of miracle. Like, we didn't know what caused the change. And for the rest of the days leading up to surgery, it was the same. The next day after that first night, when she noticed the change, she came into the kitchen. She was dancing. She was singing. She was like, she was so alive that this love that we had done in our prayer had reached heaven, and she felt so loved in return, right? That God was with her, that she started doing rosary walks with us. And would you know that soon after, the surgery happened, it thanks be to God, went well. She asked us, she said, I want to make my first Holy Communion. I want to actually be closer to God. Like, can you teach me more? And, as Sisters of Life, we really want to help them know their goodness, their love, but we're not forcing them to go to Mass or to become Catholic or anything like that. But gradually, as they receive love, they turn the question back on us and they're like, so who is the man in your life? And why are you doing this? They start asking questions, and it's great, and then we can talk a little bit more about Jesus and how amazing he is. So sure enough, we taught her about the faith. She received all this instruction. And then there was a certain priest that really had helped her on her journey. And she said, I would like if that priest can come and do my first communion. So I called him up, and his schedule was quite full the next couple of months. So he kept on saying, Sister, I can't do anything in April or May or June. The soonest I have is July. And I was like, are you sure? So I hung up, and I would call back in another week. I'm like, Father, just double checking. Is there anything else you have sooner?
Yeah.
And he said, Sister, the first date I have is July 24th. That's the first date I have. I said, okay, I'll take it. Well, I'm sorry, Father. I'm just trying to see if what's going to happen. So I hang up the phone, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second. Type in the computer, St. Charbel's feast day, July 24th.
Come on.
Oh my gosh.
And I felt like St. Charbel was like, I love you.
I heard you. Don't worry.
I heard you. And it was so beautiful because as I told her, I was like, you're not going to believe this, Pam. Like, the only date for the next like 3 months that this priest has is July 24th, and that's the feast of Saint Charbel. And she felt like, she's like, this feels like my wedding day. She literally was so excited to put on a white dress and a veil. She was so excited to unite herself with Jesus. And it was about Saint Charbel, yes, but it was ultimately about Jesus. And it was such a beautiful story that gave such hope, I think, to the other women that were also living there in the house, and the sisters, and just deepened her own hope that, God is writing a beautiful story in the midst of a very messy situation, and suffering is still there. I mean, her child has other needs that continue, but God's a part of it, and He's ultimately crafting that story and leading her and carrying her and giving her the strength and the ticket to get where she's going. So I think those moments when you see the faith come alive in another are priceless. You really you can't put a price tag on it. So it was a great thing that deepened my faith, and is a story amongst others, but really a beautiful one of that childlike faith coming alive.
Well, and just the power of accompaniment, that you are there to walk with people in some of their darkest hours, on a very human level, but the ultimate hope would be that they would unite themselves to the Lord. And so, that story is just a perfect illustration. Thank you so much, sister.
Thank you for your ministry. Thanks for sharing that story, sister. God bless you.
Absolutely. Yes. Keep us in prayer. Thank you.